We have some pretty big news, a pretty in-depth discussion we're going to have right now. It goes with the Minnesota Timberwolves made a coaching change. This has caused a big uproar in the NBA for numerous reasons. We'll get into it right now. Basically, the Minnesota Timberwolves fired Ryan Saunders, caused some controversy. They hired Chris Finch from the Toronto Raptors, who was an assistant coach currently on the Toronto Raptors staff. So the uniqueness of what's happened as well is that generally assistant coaches don't get poached mid-season to take over a team. The way it works, most teams will wait to the off-season to sign an assistant coach that's on another team. This is one of those unique situations. I was actually part of one, which was with the Milwaukee Bucks back in the day, and had Lionel Hollins took the Memphis job mid-season and left us as an assistant. So I was part of one of those, but it's very, very rare. Now, this has caused some controversy. We've got a reporter named Mark Spears who, to give some context, Mark writes a lot of articles whenever a GM or coach is hired or fired. Mark will follow up with an article relating to skin color. And that's just something that is kind of his niche with articles is, you know, if a GM spot is open, he'll comment on whether the hiring should have been a black GM or a white GM, and vice versa with firings. And this has been no different. He's basically penned an article about kind of players and coaches around the league not being happy with the hiring, which is Chris Finch saying that David Vanderpool, who is with the Minnesota Timberwolves or was with the Minnesota Timberwolves as the head assistant, a pretty well-traveled coach, pretty good coach from what I hear, a lot of advocates, and Dame Lillard, CJ McCollum was with the Blazers. He was the head assistant under Saunders, that he should have got that job. And it's somewhat turned into a bit of a, you know, is this a player's coaches, GMs still being looked at as different for having a different skin color. And to me, it's kind of been interesting to read. The Coaches Association have put out a statement, which we'll get to a little bit later. But here's a quote from Spears. There are currently seven black NBA head coaches among 30 teams in the league, where about 75% of the players are African American. The news of Vanderpool not becoming the 8th rocked the black coaching fraternity. How do you see all that, Pro?
Bogues, you got to be really careful when you start throwing around implication, you know, when you trying to implicate somebody for being, you know, not racist, but sort of heading down that path. And it's lazy journalism if you're going to do that, but to just do it. And in my opinion, you have to break down that situation for what it is. And I've got a few points I want to make on it, because I was watching games that, you know, the night that Ryan got fired, and it sort of raised my eyebrow a little bit that Chris Finch got it and not David Vanderpool, because I know David's the lead assistant there. So yeah, it sort of caught my eye, but I didn't think much of it. And then I started seeing the players sort of tweet about it, and that's fine. You know, CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard, they work with Vanderpool. He's very well liked in the basketball fraternity through coaches and players without question. And this isn't a question if he's qualified or not, because he is qualified to be a head coach, and if he was given an opportunity. But then I started reading some accounts, you know, talking about race and, you know, another, you know, shaking my head, another time that, you know, a black person gets overlooked by a white person in the you know, coaching fraternity. And that's when I broke down the situation, and I don't see it as a race situation at all. You know, I see it as, look, they're in year 2 of their rebuild. Gerson got the job 2 years ago, hired Ryan Saunders. That was his coach to go forward with the organization. They struggled. It didn't work. He has to, you know, obviously make a coaching change. Now, when you're making the coaching change, you're year 2, you know, going into year 3 now almost, and the next coach you make, the coaching decision that you make has to be the right one, or your job's going to be on the line. You can't get 2 coaches wrong, right? So you have to make a gut decision. And the best decision you can make is by hiring somebody that's in your building. But if that person isn't right, you've had 2 years to evaluate him. He was also with him in Houston. So you have 2 years to evaluate Vanderpool if that's what the coach that you want. And if it's not the coach that you want, why are you going to have him coach 30 plus games to try to right the ship? And then if you make another coaching change, Now that new coach has to step in and try to build through training camp and maybe go through a learning curve and go 20, 30 games of struggling and then try to turn the corner, which might never get turned. So there obviously was something missing. And I don't know what that something is. And that's between the people in that building. But to say it's race it is, I think it's a little out of left field. Even though, the situation, raise an eyebrow, why are you going to take somebody from the outside? Now, the other step in this situation is you want to get your number one guy. You're in the middle of a season. So now instead of competing with 4 or 5 other clubs that were going to have coaching changes in the summer and trying to get a Chris Finch, if that's the guy that you want, why not get him now with no competition? You get the guy that you want to coach the rest of the season, let him go through his learning curve of being a first-time head coach in the NBA, and then you go forward. But that's Gerson Rosas' decision to make as a GM. His job is going to eventually be on the line if this ship doesn't get going on the right course. And again, it's not the situation, is David Vanderpool qualified to be a head coach? Because he is, and he will be. It's just not going to be in Minnesota. So my next step is, which I think is very lacking in the NBA. What I would do if I was David Vanderpool is go into the office and say, Gerson, look, I'm going to take the emotion out of it. Obviously, I'm pissed I didn't get the job. I know I'm not going to get it. But what did you see in me that I didn't do? Because you're one of 30 GMs. And I have to make sure that I tighten everything up if I want to become a head coach in this league. And what is it? And I need an honest answer. I can't have an answer that's just like going to get me out of this meeting and just so I leave and there's no confrontation. What is it that you see? See, I think there's a huge problem in the NBA, Bogues, a huge problem in coaching staffs and in the front office about the lack of feedback that not high level employees get, but like low and mid level employees, as far as getting real feedback throughout the year, how you get, how you're doing on your job. Like, you're assistant coach, you sign like a 3-year deal, a 4-year deal, and you coach your team. You either run the offense, you run the defense, whatever you do. And, you're getting high fives by everybody in the building. Oh, you're doing great. We love you. We're going to, it's going to be a long lasting relationship. And then like year 4, you're waiting to get your contract done. And then you come to the table and like, yeah, we're going to make a change. We're going to make a change with your position. Sorry, it didn't work out. And you're sitting there and you're like, what the fuck? Like, wait a minute, everything has been great. No one tells me anything. And now I'm gone and I have a family and now I got to go to fucking Sioux Falls, South Dakota and coach and try to get back in the NBA instead of somebody saying, well, wait a minute, like your pick and roll coverages weren't good. You need to retool them, or you don't present well to the team. You need to work on that. And like, I really feel as though, cause I've got friends in about 20 organizations, coaches, general, in front offices. And I ask most of the time, I said, does anyone talk to you about like what you need to get better at? And most people say no. Most people say no, but most people say no. We never have that talk. And I had head coaches ask me from all levels, how do I mentor my coaches? How do I mentor people? Then I said, fucking talk to them. Evaluate them. There shouldn't be 6 weeks, Bogues. No one's this busy. There shouldn't go 6 weeks where you don't talk to every one of your employees that are under you, coaches on your coaching staff, scouts in your front office, that you don't sit them down and say, look, this is what you do really well. This is what you really need to work on, and now you have 4 or 5 discussions throughout the year, and that's what I think makes a development of a staff member or a staff in the organization. And I think all 30 owners need to get on board with this to make sure their people are actually given feedback. So now you can employ from within. Now, look, if like a headlining head coach gets fired and you're gonna replace your offensive coordinator with that guy, I could see that. But if you have a problem like, your offense is a little old, your defense, you don't get along with the players, you gotta let them know. It's like player development. I've been in a million coaches meetings and I fucking can't stand them because I go, and they're all bitching about players and they're like, well, Johnny doesn't roll. Fuck that guy. And I'll be like, raise my hand. I'm like, well, did anyone tell Johnny he's not fucking rolling? And they go, no, they fucking should know. I said, there's your problem right there. You're setting the guy up to fail because all you have to do is have a conversation. Hey, fucking roll, and we're good to go. I remember having a conversation. It was a joking one. We had a kid named Kyle Collinsworth for the Dallas Mavericks, and he was a struggling shooter that needed to shoot more in games. And I remember I was having dinner with the coaching staff, and it was like, yeah, he doesn't shoot. I'm like, I guarantee, how many threes do you want him to take before halftime? And they're like, 3. I'm like, I bet you $10 that I can get him to shoot 3 before halftime. He said, okay. I went right to the fucking guy's hotel room. I said, look, you got to fucking shoot the ball. And that's what they're asking you to do. And you need to do it. That's what communication is, Bogues. I'm not fucking perfect. But what I'm saying is, like, you got to communicate with people. And I don't know. That might have happened in Minnesota. That may not have happened. But I'm just saying, in the league collectively, that's not done enough. So to tie this all up, I just don't like the self-righteousness of some, social media accounts and how that goes, because, I'd rather listen to fucking, Osama bin Laden, write for Hallmark and write me a fucking lullaby at night than fucking listen to somebody, some of these fucking accounts and what they say about self-righteousness, because they got more skeletons in their closet than the fucking Addams family. And some, and they talk about self-righteousness, and it's not right. It's not right for Chris Finch. It's not right for Gerson Rosas in the Minnesota Timberwolves. If you're going to put that, mark on them that like, something's not right, they're a little racist over there. And then, for African American employee, and that's not right, because how in today's society, how this shit blows up. And look, if it is a situation, if it's a Donald Sterling situation, hey, go at that motherfucker. Good. All day. But if you're not sure, and it's just because one of your boys didn't get the job and you got a little bit of frustration with it, and then you write about that, and you've got 500,000 subscribers that listen to you, that could be really dangerous if it's not 100% correct. And I don't know much about David Vanderpool's coaching. I know that it's great to give new people opportunity, and he's going to get one, and I'm sure he could be a really good coach. Chris Finch might be a great coach. He might be a failure. It doesn't matter. Gerson Rosas had 100% of the rule on who he hires and why he hires that person, because it's his gut. It's his job on the line eventually. And what if he does hire someone he feels is not the right guy, and then that he hires that person and then he gets fired? Like that doesn't work and he gets fired, and then they pat him on the back. Hey, we know you got fired and you got to move, but hey, thanks for hiring, hiring David Vanderpool. If that was the wrong guy. Look, this has happened 32 times, Bogues, in the last 10 years. 32 times this has happened where a coach got fired during the season. All right. And hiring the coach, like the head assistant, isn't necessarily the best thing to do in some of these situations. Out of the 32, I think like 4 out of the 32 lasted 4 years or more as a head coach. I think it was, who was the guy that went to Memphis, you said?
Lionel Hollins. Yep.
I'm sorry, Lionel Hollins, Frank Vogel. I know Randy are the main guys that sort of made it out of that. But, most of these guys, it's like 18 times out of 32 that the interim coach never coached the next year for the team.
Happened. I was part of one of those with Milwaukee. Terry Stotts, Larry Kraskowiak took over the second half of that season, and then the following season he was gone after that. Now he's coaching in college. So
yeah, that's it, Bogues. That's what I'm thinking. What do you think? What are your thoughts on the situation?
I just think it's just to tie a race into it. I mean, I have a few points. My first point is Chris Finch is one of the more highly touted assistants, up there with Vanderpool, up there with other people. I think it takes away from what should be a very proud moment for him and his family. I think that's the first thing I would say, is that he's now embroiled in this when he, it's got really nothing to do with him. He got hired to be a head coach, and now I think his day to enjoy his journey has now been tainted a little bit, to an extent, with all this attention now bringing race into it. My second point would be, you mentioned it a little bit, is it possible Minnesota just wants a full reset? Like sometimes teams, more often or not than not, teams want to blow things up, and that means cleaning house. They don't want any remnants of a head assistant that might have certain traits or certain philosophies that are similar to who he coached under. And there's teams that do that, and that's what looks like Minnesota's doing. They want a clean slate with their coaching staff, and they want a new, fresh face with different kind of theories on things and pick and rolls, whatever it is, right? That's number 2. Number 3, the GM, Gerson Rosas. He's of Hispanic descent. I mean, what are we saying about him? Are people really, there's an inference inference with this Spears article that it's a strategic hiring to not have a black coach or an African American coach. Like, so you're basically calling Rosas somewhat, that he's got this strategy about not. Come on, man, that's just absolutely ridiculous. The fourth one I had a big laugh at. There were people that commented. This was in articles. This was actual reporters that commented that, well, Saunders was fired and the same day Finch was hired. How was that? How was that a legitimate interview process? Well, let me give all the morons out there a tip. Chris Finch has been in discussions with Minnesota probably for the last 2, 3, 4 weeks. That's just the reality of our league. Everything's done quietly behind closed doors. The conversation would have went something like this. Hey, we're close to moving on from Saunders. Are you interested in taking the job? Yes, I am. Let's have further negotiations. Let's see how it goes before we get to a number or terms. And bang, it happened. They already had him on the short list. He was their guy. That's how that happens for people out there. People that are trying to conflate this now by saying there wasn't an interview process where people could apply and blah, blah, blah. You have no idea how things work in the NBA. Free agency signings, trades, all that shit is done sometimes years in advance. The big three is a prime example of that in Miami. That was orchestrated well before it was even close to breaking the news wire. The fifth one you hit on as well. Assistants in the offseason become highly touted assistant coaches in the offseason it becomes a bidding war, right? So Minnesota probably thought this guy's going to be a top 2, top 3 assistant coming into the offseason that's going to get a head coaching job. We don't want to bid against XYZ, all the other teams that are going to be in the lottery. We want to grab him now. There are 5 reasons that are legitimate reasons that don't even touch the skin color or background or religion or sexuality, whatever you want to, all these different things have nothing to do with it. They're and that's why I struggled with it. I think the league, to me, if there's one league or one organization in the world that I think does a pretty good job, where people aren't engaging in what Spears claims is a conspiracy in the NBA, it's the NBA. The NBA's predominantly African-American league, 75% of the players. And I think they do a pretty good job of giving players voices, letting them do a lot of things for their communities from where they grew up, where they're playing. I really haven't seen people being blackballed or, not given the right opportunity to get a job based on skin color. I haven't noticed that. Now people will say, well, you're a 7-foot white Australian dude that's now living in Australia. You don't know what it's like. Okay, that's a fair point if that's the one you want to throw at me. But I'm talking about from what I've seen. I'm a pretty observant guy in my surroundings. Whether I'm on a train, a bus, or an NBA locker room, I observe my surroundings and I just study things quietly. And from what I saw, it was clubs that I had been involved in Milwaukee and whatnot and Golden State. It was pretty good on that front. I would follow that up on whoever you are, wherever you are in the world, whatever business you run, whether it's an NBA team or your local diner, I don't care. I think you hire who you think is the best for your particular job. I don't think you look at race, religion, sexuality, gender, all that. I don't look at that, and I might be in trouble for saying that. I look at my interview candidates one by one about how they interview, what their body of work has been, previous jobs, what their references say. Are they hard workers? Do they show up on time? Are they, engaging? Are they trying to get better? Are they going to actually give some feedback to their boss that the boss might not like hearing? I like all that stuff. That's what I look for. Now, we want to be very careful if we get to a point, which now follows up to the Coaches Association statement. Something really stood out for me in that statement they put out. I mean, they put out a statement basically saying, I'll read through it real quick. It's bittersweet when one coach is fired, another is hired. But this is not about individual coaches. We would be remiss not to acknowledge a deeper concern and level of disappointment with the Minnesota head coach hiring process. The Coaches Association understands and respects its organization's right to hire and fire whoever they want whenever it chooses, but it is also our responsibility to point out when an organization fails to conduct a thorough and transparent search of candidates from a wide range of diverse backgrounds. Now, I touched on that you can throw out the window because this process started weeks ago, in my opinion. I don't think it was done in 3 hours like most people think. But anyway, continuing on, during this past offseason, we saw many NBA head coaching vacancies where teams led searches that were both diverse and transparent. This must be the standard. We must establish a level playing field and equal access to opportunity for all coaching candidates. Coaches Association has been working closely with the league office on a wide range of initiatives that will improve future coaching searches. In partnership with the NBA, we look forward to sharing details in the weeks to come. That last paragraph is somewhat concerning to me because it sounds very much like there's going to be quotas placed on interview candidates for NBA hiring the NBA teams hiring coaches? Is that what it reads like to you, Pro?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And it's not a regular situation though, Bogues. Like if Gerson took over like this offseason and he inherited Ryan Saunders and he fired him the same time that he fired him, and then he did this with Chris Finch, maybe I would have felt a little different towards it and been like, I think David Vanderpool should have finished the year. But it's not. Like, if this was the offseason, it would have been a big pool. And if you paid attention to the pool of people that he interviewed for the head job when he hired Ryan and the assistants, and it was a very thorough search. But now, in the middle of the year, I just think it's different. But I do think that you're going to see probably, more minorities, more African American, more women into the process of all these jobs to make sure that you look everywhere for these positions and you give everybody a chance, from all types of backgrounds. And I think the coaches associations is try to piggyback on it and trying to, sort of like, cover themselves, as well as trying to set up new initiatives in the future for it.
It's a slippery slope, in my opinion. I don't think it's a good thing. I'm not a fan of quotas for anything. I think it's, I'm all about equal opportunity to interview for jobs, of course, but this is somewhat, when you go for equality of outcome, you're playing a dangerous game because there will be there's always different people in the community that are part of different groups and race, religion, creed, sexuality, and then how far do you go with that equality thing where if you have to start? I mean, playing devil's advocate. You look at someone like the GM of Minnesota, Gerson Rosas. It's well known that he's worked with Finch before, right? Knows him pretty well. So I assume he had him on his short list for 2, 3, 4 years. At some time, I want to get this guy. If I'm ever GM, he'd be my guy, right? So let's say they go into a coaching search in the off season, for argument's sake, Minnesota do, and the Coaches Association has implemented that there needs to be a diverse set of candidates using their quote. I feel like it's gonna happen where Rosas knows he's hiring Finch, and then he's gonna just have 4 or 5 interviews that are ticking a box. Is that good for anyone? You're just wasting people's time. You're gonna then just appease the rule of the NBA where, okay, we need to have this formal process. I'm gonna get 4 people. I'm gonna fly them to Minnesota, go through this rigorous interview process. When Rosas hypothetically knows I'm hiring Finch regardless of what these 4 candidates do. I want my guy. This is the guy I think can change this franchise. I'm all in with this guy, but let me just tick these 4 boxes. Well, that's not good neither. You're wasting people's time, and I'd rather be just told, like, if no matter who I am or what I am, if I don't legitimately have a job for that, a chance at that job, just tell me. I'll move on and try to interview somewhere else. I don't want to be part of some box tick just to appease the NBA, and that's the dangerous game you play with quotas and different things like that. And I just don't think it's a good thing. And yeah, that's kind of all I really got on it. I think it was just concerning. And Mark Spears is notorious for these kind of articles where it does create a lot of debate and a lot of backlash and social media and whatnot, and race gets involved.
I just, and then when you throw race into it, it sort of devalues the process of, what David Vanderpool is trying to do. He's trying to be a basketball coach. He's trying to be a basketball coach. He's trying to go through the process. He's trying to be a head coach. He's working on his craft. And you don't want to be like, you just want to be careful of throwing those words out there and just make it into a situation when it's not. It's not a situation. It's like this guy had 2 years to, impress Gerson, a year and a half. And it just didn't work. It's fine. He'll get a job. He's very well liked. He will get a job.
Yeah, he's going to be head coach eventually. Like, it's just a matter of time.
Without question. Like him, Jamal Mosley, there's a few guys on a short list, coaches, assistant coaches that I think, will be head coaches, and they'll be very good head coaches. It doesn't matter if they're minority or not. They're going to be very good head coaches. And I think that, when you just make it about race, when this situation really isn't about it. It's just they made a call on a coaching candidate and they just went forward. And I'm very conscious of that. And look, there's time and place to throw the race card into it. And if that is a real bad thing going on, but this wasn't one of those situations, and it just sort of devalues it. And it just makes it a situation when it's not. And like I said, the Timberwolves are probably doing their best, Gerson Rosas is doing his best, and now Chris Finch is going to try to do his best. But you don't want, ideas getting in people's heads, and it's going to make their journey from here going to be a problem. And that's where I have an issue with it. But everybody sees the world different.
Yeah, I think you also just subtly mentioned that maybe Rosas, like I said, came into that coaching search. No matter, even if Vanderbilt was a candidate where he just thought, Finch is my guy. There might be a loyalty there. There might be a friendship there. There might be, maybe it's for that reason where that's definitely questionable, where you're like, hey, like this guy was qualified, but you hired your boy. But that's human nature. So maybe it could be that extreme. But like to throw, like you said, just to throw race into it straight away, I just don't buy what you're selling, Mark Spears. But I mean, some people do, and some people will criticize me for saying that, but it is what it is. But I think I wish the best of luck to Chris Finch. I wish the best of luck to Coach Vanderpool, and hope he's coaching the team next season or the season after. And it'll be fun to watch where that all ends up with the Minnesota Timberwolves, if they can turn that shit show around there, because it's been pretty bad for them in the last 10, 15 years. But